Mr. Becker isn't the only one who left Illinois for California. If you think back historically, the people who founded Netscape
right.
in Illinois, the people who played a major role, Sergey Brin, used to work here out in California. One of the ways universities can play a role in shaping the future of the economy is to develop technology and see that spin-off. You can't imagine a medical technology industry in Minnesota without the University of Minnesota,
right.
nor can you imagine a software industry and technology in California without Berkeley and Stanford. I'd like to know why it is that the University of Chicago, University of Illinois, and Northwestern, three major research institutions, there's been no effort to even try to utilize the resources and science that goes on in these institutions to stimulate growth. The president of the University of Minnesota said not long ago, and at least the legislature has taken this to heart, that universities are the engine of the economy in these states. And it seems to me a shame that nothing has been done about this as long as I can, I've been here about 10 years in this time. Now, there may be a moment of opportunity in the state as a result of globalization and as a result of increasing the ability of the Chinese and Indians to buy grain, that money will funnel into grain exports in this country, and especially in Illinois, where we have a competitive advantage. And what we've seen in the past, where technology industries and startups have been formed, it's really been a function of old wealth going into new industries. In Minnesota, it was the flour mills and so forth which helped to recycle into technology. And I would imagine the opportunity over the next decade or so may be there, assuming my scenario is right, that globalization will increase the value of grain commodities in this state, to funnel it into this area, but without any guidance, and not just from the leadership, but also from the universities. I mean, it was the president of these universities who went out and made the case to state legislatures that this is what's required, that the universities are the engines of growth.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with you. I would just add two little remarks to your commentary. One is, I think there is increasing evidence, very compelling evidence, that Midwest venture capitalists are much more risk averse than is the case on our East Coast, West Coast, or South Coast. And many of the developers that were trained in the Midwest went out to the East and West Coast because they could not find capital here. And I think that is something that some intervention on the part of our government, providing some sort of support for this activity, and recognizing that there are enormous probability of failures, but what you hope is that over time that you reap more than your investment. And secondly, I think that there is a misperception that we don't really have to do very much. And the feeling is very evident. There's something called iBio, which is an organization of individuals in the biotechnology industry who are trying to promote biotechnology development in the state. They've never been able to get an audience with the government. They have been able to chart how many companies that started in Illinois, were about ready to grow, try to get some grants or funds, were unable to do that, moved to Wisconsin, moved to North Carolina. Now these are companies with 200, 300 people. Yet, we are very proud about the fact that we subsidize the film industry in the state and in Chicago. And our analysis shows that the film industry generates nothing in the way of a long-term benefit. Yes, people see Chicago. What do they see in Chicago? Gangsters, cars coming out of marina towers into the river and so forth. I mean, is that the message that we want to convey? And so we subsidize this industry, but a long-term benefit to the economy that might be generated. And of course, the biotech is exactly the sort of metaphor that you're talking about, with the university exercising leadership. And I think, if truth were known, perhaps we're not entirely without blame in terms of, as an institution, the degree to which we have exercised that leadership. We have something called the Committee on Institutional Cooperation, and I've never understood why that has not become the leader. And the data that we present for the Midwest worldwide is regarded as the economic engine of this country. And why aren't our academic institutions essentially building on that by developing the sort of relationships you're talking about, but not individually, as a collective? And I think that the one thing we've got to get away from is if economic growth occurs in Michigan, there's a loss to Illinois. That's so untrue. I mean, the supply chains in the automobile industry are so integrally connected in Illinois that it's in our best interest for Michigan to grow, for Indiana to grow, for Wisconsin to grow, and of course for our own state to grow. But we've still got this zero-sum mentality. And I think we've got to think regionally and try to develop a collaboration which makes sense. Because I think differentiating ourselves at the state level is probably not very effective. But trying to integrate ourselves and present the Midwest as an economic engine with this huge educational system undergirding it. I mean, we're world class. Go ahead, sorry.
If I may just add in line about, I'm reminded of North Carolina, where I was a graduate student in the 1960s. At the time, the Research Triangle Institute consisted, I lived there in one building, and the state faced a situation where the state of agriculture, depending on tobacco, was going to go under. They virtually had to make some transformation and change. And the recognition that technology, with 3 universities located 20 miles or less from each other, could do it, was really critical to the development of Research Triangles. It spawned a whole series of technology.
Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead.
One comment. It seems to me that some of the suggestions here encourage educational research, etc., are certainly true. Of course, every state wants to do this. So we're in a very competitive situation with respect to this, with respect to development of biotechnology, solid state, all kinds of things. What you said about agriculture was very interesting insofar as I can see. But my basic question is, what can the state government do? I mean, you're giving all these problems that we have and lack of understanding about economics, but what do you recommend that the state government can do to solve these problems? You haven't really talked about that.
I think the first thing to do is to recognize that we have a problem. You know, it's the first recognition. And I think there is still this notion that with some minor adjustments we can make a transformation. Denial is still in existence. Secondly, whoever becomes governor in November, to convene a bipartisan panel, private and public sector experts, to come up with some recommendations about how we solve our fiscal problem, and with the promise that even if they violate his particular political philosophy, that he will implement them. And I'm thinking of when Jim Edgar was governor, when he finally realized that there was no other alternative but to increase the income tax.